You're tuned into the best place to learn about business. Welcome to the Harlequin Business Show with your host, Steve Sapato. And today, we have the distinct pleasure of being able to talk with an author and an attorney, and her name is Melody Kramer, and she's going to be making lawyers useful again. Won't that be an extraordinary experience? Melody, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Okay, so tell me a little bit about you before we get into anything else. What's your background? What's your history? Where do you come from? And where are you now?
Wow, that's a lot to ask all at one time.
Yeah, it takes about 20, 30 seconds to get there, yeah.
I am an attorney. I've been a trial lawyer now for over 20 years, and I have advocated for clients all around the country in cases involving criminal law, business law, patent infringement, even some civil rights, smidgen of election law. But what I've come to over the years of seeing how justice plays out in courtrooms around the country, I've realized how much better it should be and how much change is needed. And so I embarked on a project several years ago, starting with writing some books, but also doing some speaking and workshops. But I'm trying to make the legal system and lawyers more responsive to clients, the kind of end consumers of the legal process. And so the first book that I wrote had to do first with just letting clients kind of get an inside look at how lawyers function and what's going on in their heads and why they seem to be so strange and actually scary to a lot of people. And so that was step one, and then we'll go from there.
Wow, yeah. And you know what? You've got a current book out right now, right?
Yes, I do. My current book is Lawyers Decoded, and it just was relaunched on Amazon last night, actually. This book came out originally titled Why Lawyers Suck. And it gives you a little idea of just being honest with the perception that people have about lawyers. But after a couple of years and after too many Facebook and Amazon ads sort of filtered me out as being either hate speech or obscene, I decided the book needed a new title, and it really needed to tie into what I'm trying to convey, which is looking inside lawyers' minds and using that information to empower people to be able to more effectively work with their lawyers, save money, reduce the length of lawsuits.
That's, I think, one of the greatest challenges most of us have when we talk about, do you need an attorney or when do you use an attorney? Everybody goes all the time. And it's because we got this wonderful term called legalese, don't we? Which is attorney speak or law speak. And I'm not even sure. It's like the tax codes, everything is written, so it has to be decoded. I think that's a great title for this book, because everything we're reading these days has to be decoded. I remember one of the people running for president, the woman running for president against Trump at some point in time, not Hillary, but on his same side, where she said she was going to reduce the tax code to a 3-page document. And it's like 5,000 pages now is what they were saying. And I'm like, how could anybody possibly read that kind of stuff, retain it, decode it? And yet we have to do that in everything we do, don't we?
Yes, and I will tell you, just you think 5,000 pages is it? It's really not. When I went to law school, I went to University of Nebraska College of Law. And when I went into their amazing law library, we got a tour, the first day, here's where all the stuff is. And we went upstairs, and there are 2 rooms up there that are the tax library.
2
rooms full of books that had the tax code, that had cases interpreting the tax code, that had regulations, that had everything is so complex. And there's a reason I didn't go into tax law. It's like complexity even beyond what I was doing.
Yeah, how did we get there? I mean, what got us to this place where we can't even understand, we can't even get a what we call a simple contract is 5 to 10 pages now.
Well, the irony is I knew that needed to be addressed in my book. And so one of the chapters in my book is Lawyers Cannot Do Simple. And it's the longest chapter, and it's the only one that has subsections within the chapter. It's built into the system, and lawyers are taught and put in fear of missing details. And and that's why we're trained to see any possible thing that could go wrong, like you said, with a contract. And in my book, I go through this simple little agreement between neighbors of take care of my dog during vacation, and I'll bake you a pie when I get back. And it turns into this lengthy contract.
Yeah.
Because you keep putting in more and more layers of details. And what people don't understand is lawyers will go as detailed as you will pay them to do. And we can find holes in any contract. Anyone who has gotten out of law school, has a law degree, can find holes in contracts because nothing is perfect. But what I realized in working with businesses, and a lot of time with smaller businesses, they don't care about that level of detail. They really don't want to. They want to go out and do business. They want to sell their product. They want to sell their service. Yes, they need to have a contract for whatever it is they're doing, but they're willing to take a little bit of risk of maybe there's some issue going on with it, some little hole in it that someone can wiggle out of. They're willing to take that risk so they don't have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for that document.
Because I do public speaking courses as well as I do business coaching, I try and tell people as I hire them in, as they join me, I should say, that I do a real simple contract. And a simple contract is just this. You can get out of it anytime you want. Just give me a little notice. And this is what I promise to do for you. If this is what you promise to do for me, either one of us decides we don't like it, get out. And
Exactly.
it's still, even at that level, you wonder, could somebody come back and sue me? And the answer is obviously yes, because I said something wrong or did something wrong, that they say, hey, you owe me, instead of $12,000 to help me coach to a new level, you're going to owe me $200,000 because you messed it up. And that's always a fear of everybody who gets involved in anything, isn't it?
It is possible, and it's certainly a sort of a legitimate fear, but at the same time, if you live your life governed by fear, you're just going to, hibernate in your closet the rest of your life.
Well, that's right.
And then worry about fires or earthquakes. I mean, there's no way of getting rid of that fear. But what I found, and I've litigated many contract disputes, and what it comes down to is what gets people into the courthouse is unmet expectations and then poor communication about those unmet expectations. And this applies to marriage, by the way, too.
Oh, I'm sure.
If you're wondering.
I'm sure.
Unmet expectations and then poor communication. And so what I started doing was teaching business owners how to write their own contracts. Because let's get real, they're not going to want to write me a check for $3,000 to write a complicated contract for them. They don't want me to do that. They're not going to do it. So how about I just teach them how so they can use their substantive expertise in their business to write something that's meaningful, that is relatively hole-free, but is going to get them to the next step. They can always call me if everything goes bad. But if they write their own contract like you were describing with your relationships, here's how it works, they're less likely to get into trouble with it anyway. And when they understand the whole unmet expectations and the communications thing, the likelihood of them ending up in a courtroom is so much lower that it's an acceptable risk to take. And I'm doing a better job as a lawyer if I'm helping to meet their actual need instead of playing fancy, well-educated lawyer and trying to do too much.
Yeah, but that also brings up, when all the news shows these huge settlements, and everybody goes back to the McDonald's lady who, spilled that hot coffee on her lap and got 27, zillion dollars or something. And after about, 20 years of litigation and fighting back and forth, she ended up with only like $750,000. But
right.
I've been a real advocate for most of my life, and with how do we determine a settlement? And I've always said, whatever the person has earned for the last 5 years. So if I earned $60,000 for the last 5 years, the maximum I should get is whatever my life expectation is. So if I'm 50 years old and I'm expected to work to 75 now, that's 25 years of $60,000. So that's only like, I don't know, $2 million. And yet somebody will get awarded, $200 million. How do we justify that when, it's way, way over the top, right?
Well, it may seem way over the top based on limited information that you get, but I will tell you from doing a lot of plaintiff's work, the compensation that people get for accidents, that get for injuries, often is well below what would be reasonable, and many go without compensation at all. Let me explain, like with the McDonald's coffee case. That sounded absolutely unreasonable to me too, until I actually pulled some information, detailed information about the case. And what I found out was their coffee was heated far higher, far hotter than any cup of coffee you would get anywhere else. It was dangerously hot. They had had hundreds, if not thousands, of prior complaints of people being burned with coffee, people who had not sued, but that had filed complaints saying, hey, your coffee is so hot. I accidentally spilled it, which does happen with coffee, and, got these horrendous burns on my arm, something not to be expected from burn from hot coffee. Their McDonald's behavior was unsafe, and this lawsuit brought attention to it, and they lowered the temperature of their coffee. Now, I don't know exactly the details of the injuries to this particular plaintiff, but I think she was going through the drive-thru. I think she had set this coffee in her lap, and it spilled and burned her private areas very, very badly. And I can only imagine the pain and suffering she had gone through because they had coffee way, way, way too hot for anyone to reasonably expect.
Okay.
So, there was something to that, but what this person had to go through in the whole litigation process and appeals and all that, and then however much the costs were, medical bills, the attorneys, it's not like she walked away a millionaire. So it's kind of a, who wins out of this whole situation? Yes, maybe the public, in the sense that McDonald's lowered the temperature of their coffee, but in terms of the actual plaintiff, she went through a lot to get to what looks like a lot of money, but in the end may not have been that much.
I gotcha. And that, that kind of, it makes sense that it was but still, I don't know. For me, it's still a struggle. Yeah, it sounds like a lot. And you and I know the attorneys got most of the money, I have to say, when the thing's all settled out. Yes. But it was one of those deals where, McDonald's needed their attention got, I guess is what you're saying in this, right?
Right.
And so to get my attention of a big corporation like that. But then you also hear that, the guy who, the burglar who breaks into the guy's house and steps on a broken nail and then can sue the homeowner for, being dangerous himself. And you're like, well, that's just all crazy, isn't it?
That's crazy. I'm not going to argue that one with you. That's crazy.
But that's what you're trying to put together in your book is how much we really loathe attorneys now and how we need to get back to liking attorneys.
Well, I think the first step is understanding, because that then empowers you. And I tell you, so many people have come back to me, some even my own clients, who have taken advice from this book and adapted how they interact with me or with their attorney to lower their legal bills, because they realize that if you give an attorney an open-ended sort of thing, draft me an ironclad contract, okay, fine, we can do that, but it'll take us so many hours and cost you so much money you'll regret those instructions. But if you say, can you review this contract for me? Really, all I'm concerned about is paragraph 3, 4, and 5. Does that create huge liability for me? Okay, then it takes a lot less time. They're paying a lot less money, and they're getting exactly what they need for a reasonable price.
I gotcha. So go ahead.
So yeah, if you understand that we kind of can't help ourselves, lawyers can't help ourselves from being so meticulous and detailed, as a client, you can sort of pull us back in. Or you can start out, if you've got a lawsuit, start out with understanding that when you go to a lawyer's office for a case that's usually done on a contingency fee, that's going to be different from an hourly fee. Because if someone comes in and says, hey, I want to do this legal thing, I want to file this lawsuit, do whatever you need to do, yes, I'll pay your hourly rate, I can't help myself. I'm going to want to maximize profit for my law firm, and I'm going to want to bill as many hours as I can. I mean, I got to run a business too.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I'm gonna send you status updates every day. I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna listen to you endlessly. I'm going to research everything.
You sound like you're a life coach.
Well, I mean, why not if you're being paid hourly and the client's willing to pay that?
That's right.
And I try not to overbill my clients. So if I even realize that there's a pull to do that, there's a big problem. And a lot of law firms, it's shameless how much time they'll spend on insignificant things that don't help their clients. And I've seen it from, sometimes being on the plaintiff side, watching the defendant's side, which is usually paid hourly, and you have this big fancy law firms, and I've been up against most of them in the country, and I see not all of them, but most of them will shamelessly spend time arguing over little nitpicky stuff that does not have any effect on their client's case. There's one we were doing patent infringement cases, and we had to do these series of joint reports with the other side, with the other counsel.
Okay.
And we had several cases going. All of these were due in one day, and we had gotten all of these done by about 4 o'clock, and we're getting them filed. Paralegals are getting them filed with the court. And there was one left over, and this other attorney argued with my co-counsel for at least an hour on whether a certain sentence should be underlined or in italics.
Oh, wow.
How do you, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But if clients don't understand that's what lawyers will do if you empower them to do it, they're going to be wasting so much money.
But you say empower them to do it. We, at this point in time, because we haven't read your book, supposedly, we don't know how to not empower. We say, hey, I just need help with this, so I'm going to hire an attorney. And you say, just go for it, right? I mean, it's like the butcher when they you call them up and say, hey, I need a cut of meat because I'm going to be doing, brisket for Christmas. And they say, well, what kind do you want? And you go, you're the butcher. You know best. Fix me up.
No. Shop around.
See?
Shop around. And I understand that it is daunting to shop around because you don't know exactly what you're looking for.
That's right.
It's getting used to it. And that will be the subject of my next book that I'm already working on. That will be actually a more detailed handbook of specifics. Here's what paragraphs to look for in the fee agreement. Here's how to vet attorneys. That I will have in my next book. This one has the more generalized sort of things. But looking for, you want to look for someone who's willing to work with you. And this is especially focusing on business clients. You're smart. You know stuff. You understand your business better than anyone else does. And frankly, when it comes to writing like your basic contracts that you use over and over again with your clients, you should be writing most of that contract because you are the one who is supposed to know what the process is. When I sign up a client or a customer, we do this and this and this and this. They're supposed to do this and this and this. These are things that you know better than any lawyer can do.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you here a second. So when you're talking about this, people probably have a ton of questions for you already. How do they get in touch with you?
They can contact me at melody@legalgreenhouse.com. It's Melody as in music, Melody, at legalgreenhouse.com.
legalgreenhouse.com. I like that Melody as in the music, Melody. As opposed to IE, because that's what when I have people on all the time, I always say you gotta spell it out for them, because a lot of times the simplest names. We just ran across somebody's name. We were down in Australia, and I don't know if it popped up here, but there was matter of fact, I saw it. Someone talked about it. It was on the news here, even, because a flight attendant had done something with somebody's name, a little girl's name, and it was
ABCDE.
Yeah.
ABCDE.
Yeah, and her name was pronounced Absidy. And so, there's no way I would spell Absidy, ABCDE. So, yeah, whenever they come on, it's like they have to get in touch with you. You have to spell their name, and you have to do it in detail, because there's so many different ways we can get lost in it. So it's melody@legalgreenhouse.com?
Correct.
Excellent. And then that's your website then is legalgreenhouse.com, so if they wanted to read a little more?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm a nutball on one of the things that I think attorneys in particular, anybody who struggles with the legal part of not being able to contact people. So I don't know how your area is, but down here in Florida, attorneys cannot call somebody first. They call it ambulance chasing or something, but they can't call them first, so they have to be contacted first. So I'm a nutball on when somebody comes to visit your website, how it needs to be designed and laid out. That's what I do as a business coach, of course, help people design and lay out things so that you can capture their email that says they're interested, and you can now contact them. And
yes.
So on your website,
we can chat more about that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be
chat
great.
more about that.
But
meanwhile,
legalgreenhouse.com.
Right, the email will work, or I'm on LinkedIn, Melody A. Kramer, and that's Kramer.
Okay.
And I'm also on Facebook. And
still Melody Kramer?
Still Melody Kramer, although my author page is Author Melody Kramer.
Author Melody Kramer. Kramer.
Correct.
Gotcha. Now, why did you have to put the A? Yeah, why did you have to put the A in there for LinkedIn?
Okay, so the A has to do with, unfortunately, there are other Melody Kramers in the world. I don't know who said they had permission to use my name. But
I'd sue them if I were you. That's what I would do.
Well, actually, some of them are pretty higher profile, if you will, busy online. One's a real estate agent. I'm not sure where. I think that one's a Melody Joy Kramer, but shows up in search results a lot if you just put Melody Kramer. And then there's also a former podcaster, someone on NPR. There's a Melody Kramer that was on NPR.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I figured I needed to use my middle name, my middle initial,
Gotcha.
professionally to distinguish me from SEO results.
Gotcha. So that's good. So, I mean, now we know how to contact you. And I interrupt you right in the middle of thought, of course. That's what I do best. But it was how do we start to understand how to deal with an attorney when we bring them on board? So we don't just give them carte blanche and say, hey, design me a contract. It should be, here's a contract I've written. Would you look it over and fix a couple places?
Yes. And I've practiced these things out a little bit. I mean, I came up with concepts and thought, okay, let me play it out within my own law firm and see how this works. And that I've gotten great response on is both I'll do it for a flat fee. It's like $199, $299, depending on the length of the contract. And I will go through and I will tell them whether there are any red flags in there, as in sometimes there's something that just looks a little off or looks non-standard or something that we should talk about. Or I'll add maybe some little bit of detail. Like maybe they'll say that the certain amount of money is due, but they won't say when it's due or what happens if it's not paid.
Oh, okay.
Those are real crucial things. The other thing is I give people some basic rules on signing contracts. One is do not sign a contract that has something in it that you don't understand, unless you're willing to risk who knows what.
But now, isn't that the problem? Because, so many of these contracts, I mean, we see it on TV all the time, and I always ask everybody around me, how many of us have signed a contract that we literally didn't read because they're 10 or 12 pages long in that teeny, like 4-point type or something, right?
I agree, and I admit that I have signed contracts without reading them also. But here's what I think is the most important thing to look at, and that is what awful thing will happen to me if I want to get out of this contract. You described your coaching contract or whatever. You can get out if you have certain notice and whatever, certain criteria met. You have that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, before you sign somebody else's contract, look through there for termination, default, clauses like that, and find out what happens if you want to get out. Because stuff happens. Maybe you've got every intention of following through with the contract, and then something bad happens financially or personally or something. And here's an example. I'm going on a cruise. When you buy those expensive tickets for going on a cruise, you want to know if something happens, let's say you get sick the week before and you can't go on the cruise. Can you get your money back? Can you send someone else to go in your place? These are things you need to know. Now, you may still sign the contract. It may be, okay, well, if I get sick and can't go, I don't get any of my money back.
Because isn't that what we do on airplanes every day?
Yeah. Well, I fly Southwest, and they've got great terms.
Do they? Okay.
Flights. So, yeah. But the idea is look at what happens if you want to get out, and then look at what happens if they want to get out of the obligation.
Gotcha.
So I had a business colleague some years ago, and she was so excited. She'd gotten this brand new contract for a year working for this very stable, very great company, and she adapted. She kind of phased out some of her other smaller clients in order to take on this new gig. Very excited about it. A month before she was ready to start that new gig, they sent her a letter and said, we're canceling the contract. And sure enough, she looked in the contract, and they had the ability at their own option to just back away, at least like 30 days before it started. She had no recourse at all, and it was right in black and white in the contract. You need to know these things because that's how a business person calculates risk.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you don't sign it. I reviewed a 22-page lease agreement once for a client, and it had, I thought, horrendous clauses.
22 pages to lease something.
Gaping holes where the landlord could charge them thousands and thousands of dollars for this, that, the other thing.
Wow.
And I put together a memo saying here are areas of concern and recommended maybe you might want to look for another place. And the client said, no, I'm going to sign it, and here's why, and explained his business reasons for doing it. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Based on the whole big picture, which he knew and I didn't.
Oh, good point.
It was worth that risk of those things in the contract. So it comes back to the lawyer can't tell you how to run your business. They can tell you, here are the potholes you're probably going to want to avoid.
Yeah.
Here are some mistakes you may want to make, but it's your business, and you evaluate these risks and whatever. I'm just here to give you more insight and more information for you to use.
Well, and along that line, of course, as a small business coach, I get people all the time who want to start a new business, and they usually want to start like with a partner, with somebody else who win. And I always recommend talking to an attorney because isn't that one of the pitfalls? They say partnerships never work out, but you got to know those things.
You need to know those things, but also I would say on business partnerships, and I've done them too, and they've crashed and burned, you need to structure something where you have a little bit of a test period for both sides to that, because you don't know if it's going to be a good working relationship or not. And I don't care if it's your mother or some stranger you met on the street. You don't know what working together is like. And unless you have some sort of low-level, let's test this out for a little while process, it's more likely to be a problem. And I have found business partnerships that have fallen apart for things such as disagreeing on how aggressive to capital investment in the business, how fast to put money in on doing that, what to charge clients on stuff like how many hours you're in the office working, whether you stay there till midnight working on a project or whether you go home and get a good night's sleep. These are things that like annoy partners no end if you're not on the same understanding of what everyone's contributing and what they're getting out of the partnership. So, talking to a lawyer up front, and I recommend that people get to know lawyers in advance of meeting them, because then you get a little better sense of what they're like. You get a little bit of free information as you go along.
Wait, you said get to know them before you meet them?
Before you hire them.
Before you hire them. Okay, gotcha.
And you should know, especially if you're in any kind of business, you should know a general business lawyer who, if they don't do it themselves, have connections with people who are specialists in intellectual property, in tax, in other sort of specialized areas in case you need that. You should make friends with a criminal defense attorney. I'll get to why in a minute.
But you say make friends. That's not easy. I mean, I don't run in the circles where I meet attorneys normally.
Well, we're kind of scary, okay? I mean, I've had people just sort of, the look on people's faces when they hear I'm a lawyer, it's sheer terror. And it's just like a social setting. It's not even like I'm doing them. So, you got to get over that a little bit.
Maybe it's your hairdo.
Just be a little more, no, it's just, but, so a criminal defense attorney, a divorce attorney, and
just along that line, while you're saying that, if I went back 15 years of my life, I would have no idea. I never met attorneys. I never really knew any. And one of the things that I've done is I've joined networking groups as a small business person, and every once in a while you will run into an attorney who belongs to a networking group, because that's how they get referrals, of course. And that lays the foundation for how you can get to know an attorney. So if you're a small business person, make sure you get in the right place so you can meet a few attorneys so that you can do what Melody is talking about, which is get to know them.
Right, because you're going to be, if you hire them, you're going to be sharing intimate parts of your business, your life with them. You want someone you feel comfortable with. Now, the reason I said criminal defense attorney and family law attorney is this. Especially as a business owner, as a professional, if you're a coach, you have these personal relationships with your clients. And when something goes horrible in their lives, you are an amazing reference to people that they don't want to contact cold. And you'll have this all the time where you have someone calling you up going, I'm going to have to cancel my meeting with you tomorrow. My son just got arrested for DUI and Wouldn't it be great if you said, hey, I know this criminal defense attorney.
That's a real great
Talk to them. Or I've had the same with divorce cases. You don't want to go out cold to someone. Your life has been torn apart, and sometimes in catastrophic fashion. Do you want to go and make acquaintance with a scary family law lawyer that you've never heard of, that no friend has heard of, that you have no connection with? No, you want a trusted referral from someone that you know.
You know what's funny about that is I've got two attorneys in one of my groups, and they profess that their job, their purpose, their meaning in life type thing is to not go to court for their clients, but to settle long before we get there. And I thought that was I thought that was a real fascinating. Not many attorneys have I heard profess that way, so I thought that was pretty cool too.
That is somewhat unique. But I'm glad to see that there's more of that, because going to court, although that's a great adrenaline rush for lawyers, it is exhausting for clients to get there. For one thing, it usually takes at least a year, often more, to get there. The process of trial is just horrible to go through. And you really have no idea how a group of strangers is going to view your case.
Yeah.
You may have a great case, but you don't know what they're going to think, and I have seen jurors do amazingly unexpected things.
Shouldn't I just hire Bull and his team of people to set that all up? Do you watch that TV show Bull?
No, I have not seen that.
Oh, you haven't? Yeah,
No.
it's all about this. And maybe he was an attorney. I don't know the background there, but his whole job is to hire a whole nother set of jurors that mimic the actual jurors, and then run across all the stuff that they're doing to see what kind of reactions. And you think, wow, what kind of money does that take?
Well, there are jury consultants, and I've worked with them before, and they're very, very expensive.
I bet.
So again, there's that sort of, if you have more money to feed into it, lawyers are happy to spend it for you.
Sure.
And it's still not precise. I mean, I refer to picking a jury as a little bit of black magic. You don't know exactly. And I have picked jurors before and then talking with them after the case and found out I was horribly wrong, either badly or in a good way, but horribly misjudged how they would view the case.
Wow. And isn't that amazing? I mean, that is amazing. One of the things that I've sat in the courtroom several times because first of all, I'm always curious as to how things work, but you also know different people and different things, so you end up sitting in court. And TV attorneys are, really vibrant and energetic, and they talk. But in real life, most of the attorneys I've watched really just bore me to death. I couldn't stay awake if I was on the jury if I tried.
It's true. And I have served on a jury once, and what amazed me and severely humbled me was the fact that the attorneys pursued the case and argued it very similar to how I would have done it. Decisions they made, who they put on the witness stand, who they didn't put on the witness stand. It's decisions I would make. They were good attorneys on both sides. And yet I found myself, and really all the juries, we talked about the lawyers, but we really didn't care what they had to say. We did focus on the evidence. We did vigorously debate it. We were deadlocked for probably about 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And finally, there were two of us that were holdouts, and then one of the other ones caved, and then I finally decided if as a lawyer I can't convince my fellow jurors in 3 days, maybe, this isn't about my ability to be pig-headed, because that's endless. Maybe maybe they're right. And so we ended up voting for conviction, voted guilty, and it was amazing to see the reaction of the other jurors who were so amazingly supportive of me, even though I had caused them to miss 3 days of, whatever else of their lives.
Well, but they got compensated $27 or something, right?
I know, something like that per day. It was crazy. But I forgot the jury form in the jury room. It's kind of funny. As a lawyer, you still lose your head when you're when you're doing something that serious. But jury duty is interesting, and it's a great thing that we have that. But from a business perspective, if you are having to go to trial on something, probably you've lost already, because you spent so much time and money and time away from your business endeavors that whatever you end up with, you're not going to be.
It's crazy. And so, again, let's do this. The name of your book again is?
Lawyers Decoded.
Lawyers Decoded. And we can get it where? On
Amazon.
Okay.
You can get it in paperback or in Kindle.
Now, let me ask you a question, because see, if I tell people to go to get my networking book, which is Become the Go-To Person of Your Own Success, if they type that in, they get nothing from Amazon. So they have to look it up by author. So they have to look it up by my name. Can they look under Lawyers Decoded and get to your book?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
I've tested it. They can.
Excellent. All right. And they can go to your website or write to your email. What's your email again?
Melody at legalgreenhouse.com, and that's MELODY at legalgreenhouse, all one word, .com.
Excellent. And certainly, you're open for taking any questions if they decide to drop you a note on something they might be working on right now, and then you'll be glad to work with them a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I told Melody that I would have her on the show about 35 minutes, and we're pushing 45, I think, right now. So, but this has been really a really good conversation. I really appreciate it. I know we're going to have some good listeners on this episode of the Harlequin Business Show. So, Melody, I appreciate you being on. Any last words that you want to give out to our audience today?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, and go out and buy the book and keep posted for the next one that should be coming up within the coming year. That's a more detailed book, How to Train Your Lawyer. It will be coming up. So for now, go out and buy Lawyers Decoded, and hopefully that'll save you a lot of money.
And here's what I'll tell you on that, and that's even if you don't buy Melody's current book, if you think you want to learn about or get the other book, the new one coming out, and I certainly would recommend both. She actually sent me a copy, and I've been fascinatingly reading it for the last couple of days. It's really a good read, which, coming from an attorney, I probably wouldn't normally have said that. But it's really a good read.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And what I want you to know is, if you write to her, like go to her email that we just talked about, and say, hey, I'd like to be put on the list for your new book, she will be happy to send you an email when that new book comes out. Correct, Melody?
Yes, would be thrilled to do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that going, I sure appreciate having you on. If you guys have any legal questions at all, just call me and ask me, and I will give you my opinion, which of course is worth absolutely nothing. So you should call Melody second and see what she actually has to help you with. And I hope you all have a magnificent week and a great 2019 as we're coming up. And again, legal questions to Melody at legalgreenhouse.com. I'm Steve Sapato with the Harlequin Business Show. God bless.